Welcome back. Tape number 3, we're going to look at the chords in the key of D. D is an excellent key for guitar because it uses a lot of open strings. A couple of the chords are very, very simple, and one of them is a little, well, some people find it very difficult, some people find it very easy. And it is in fact the D chord, the one we're going to start with. Now the D chord is a 4-string chord, which means generally you do not strike the 6th string or the 5th in a strum. You can use the 5th string when playing bass and alternate bass notes, but we haven't done that yet, although we will, very soon. So here is the D chord. The D chord starts with the 1st finger on the 3rd string behind the 2nd fret. Then the 2nd finger is the 1st string behind the 2nd fret. And the 3rd finger kind of skinches in the middle there on the 2nd string behind the 3rd fret. Now we had talked about the best sound coming from when the fingers were right behind the fret. Well, when you're playing chords, if you put that 1st finger right behind the fret, there's not a lot of room to get that 2nd finger in there. So you're going to have to pull it back a little bit. Alright? Now this is called D, or D major. Let's do it again together. We're going to take the 1st string behind the 3rd string 2nd fret, the 2nd finger behind the 1st string 2nd fret, the 3rd finger behind the 2nd string 3rd fret. Now with my pick, I'm going to strum starting at the 4th string, and it's going to sound like this. As a chord, one note at a time. With a little bit of a rhythm. That's the D chord. I'm going to count to 4 now. Let's strum it together 4 times at the speed that I'm counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the next chord in the key of D is a G chord, and we already know the G chord. We learned it last tape in tape number 2. The G chord begins with the 5th string behind the 2nd fret, the 6th string behind the 3rd fret, and the 1st string behind the 3rd fret. Now from the D chord, that fingering is fairly fast, because you'll notice the 3rd finger here is on the 2nd string of the 3rd fret. So to get to the G chord, it only has to go over 1 and these 2. Also the 1st finger only has to go to there. Now this fingering with 2, 3, and 4 is still an excellent fingering, but you'll probably find at first much easier to go with 1, 2, and 3 on the G chord. Now the 3rd chord in this key is another 7th chord. It's the A7. I'll give you a couple different ways to play it. I play the A7 with the 2nd finger on the 4th string behind the 2nd fret. Let's find it there. The 3rd string is open. The 2nd string is behind the 2nd fret with the 3rd finger, and the 1st string is open. Now the difficulty in this chord is that 3rd string, because if you mute out the 3rd string, you don't really get the 7th sound. So work very hard to get that 3rd string, and you got to move your hand around and work it out till finally you get a nice clean sound. Some people play the A7 with the 1st finger on the 4th string behind the 2nd fret, 3rd string open of course, and the 2nd finger behind the 2nd string at the 2nd fret, And then when they go to the D chord, you see they just take those two, move them over, and put the fingers down. I'm going to count to 4, and we'll play that A7 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we have D, G, and A7. And as we're moving along, this is tape number 3. You already know the G chord. I'm going to count to 4, and let's get right to strumming 4 of each chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try it one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, we're going to add a third chord to this key. If you go to the A7, we're going to play an A major, and we do that by taking the second finger and putting it on the 3rd string at the 2nd fret, and the 1st finger and placing it on the 4th string at the 2nd fret. So you have the 5th string open, the 4th string behind the 2nd fret, the 3rd string behind the 2nd fret, the 2nd string behind the 2nd fret, and the 1st string open. Now some people find it easier to place the 1st finger on the 3rd string, 2nd fret, the 2nd finger on the 4th string, 2nd fret, and the 3rd finger back on the 1st string. Some people find that a little more comfortable, and actually that's not a bad way to play it. We'll learn when we do the key of E that there's a lot of advantages to using that fingering. Of course, if you play the same frets, it doesn't matter what fingers you use. It's always going to sound the same because you're playing the same notes. Oftentimes I will use my 2nd, 3rd, and 4th finger to play that chord. Now what we'll try now is we're going to go from A for 4 strums, to G for 4 strums, to D for 4 strums. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go D for 4, A for 4, G for 4, back to D. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me play that for you with a little different tempo and a little different rhythm. The list goes on. These combinations of chords, if you were to listen to the radio for an hour, chances are most of what you heard could be played with some combination of the chords we've already learnt on these 3 tapes. Now, you must be getting a little curious about what's going on with that right hand. You're hearing all kinds of sounds, but the fingers don't seem to be moving, they're just staying on the chord. So we're going to do a little bit of that today. There will be a tape on just finger picking, that's using the fingers to play notes, and there will be a tape just on hammering and different rhythms. But just to get you going, I'd like to show you one of the most basic techniques when playing a chord is to hit what's called the bass note as a separate note. Now, my fingers are on the D chord, which we learned on this tape. Now, if I were to say to you, we're going to play a D chord, and ask you then, what is the strongest note of a D chord? I mean, we know that there's 4 notes in this chord, we strum 4 strings. And you don't know what the other notes are, but obviously it's logical and safe to assume that a D chord, the strongest note would be in fact a D. And that is called the root of the chord. The root of a C chord is a C. The root of a G chord is a G. The root of an A chord is an A. So what we do when we play bass notes is we strike the root note and then strum the remaining strings. Now remember when we learnt on the very first tape the names of our open strings. We had this in mind when we got to here. This is where it would come important. So the 4th string open, as you learnt on that tape, is a D. So if you strike the 4th string open and then strum the remaining strings, now we know on a D chord is actually, if you were to just strum a D chord, you would strum the full 4. But when you play bass notes, you don't want a muddy sound. You want to have a clear bass, so you strum only the remaining strings. So here we have bass, strum, bass, strum. Let's do it together. I'll count to 4. We're on the D chord, and we'll strike the 4th string and then strum, and we'll just keep doing that till it's nice and comfortable. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Go. Now all of those notes make up the D chord, so you could strike any note really. But none of them will sound as good as just the D. Now, we also know the G chord, and on the left hand I'm going to put my fingers on a G, and have a look. We strike all 6, and what note do you think is the strongest note of a G chord? Well, it's the G. The G is found on the 6th string 3rd fret, which is already part of your chord. So we're going to strike the 6th string, the remaining strings, back and forth at my count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now on the A chord or the A7 chord, doesn't matter whether it's A minor, A7, A11, the root of all A chords is an A. A is the 5th string open. I'm going to strike the 5th string open and then play the remaining A7 chord. Let's do it together. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to play the G, A7, and D, starting with the D, and I'll strike the bass, strum, bass, strum. Then from the D chord, I'll go to the G chord, bass, strum, bass, strum. From the G chord to the A7, bass, strum, bass, strum, back to the D chord. I'll do it once and you listen. 1, 2, 3, 4. A little more tempo. To go back to the chords from your second tape, the G chord, the bass, is the 6th string 3rd fret. The C chord, and you might want to write this down, the C chord is the 5th string 3rd fret, part of your chord. The D7 is the 4th string open. So here is your G, C, and D7 with your bass note followed by a strum, bass note followed by a strum on each one. G, C, D7, back to G. The E minor chord, the bass is the 6th string. The A minor, like the A7, the bass is the 5th string. The B7, the bass is the 5th string 2nd fret. That's part of your chord. So here is E minor, A minor, B7, E minor, bass, strum on each chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. With a little bit of speed. Let's go back up to the left hand, because I'd like you to see those chords being fingered while the bass and the strumming is being played. That just helps solidify in your mind exactly what's going on. Alright, and we can do this together if you like. We'll start with the D chord, to the G chord, to the A7 chord, and it's going to be bass, strum on each chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to double that speed just to give you something to work towards. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here it is on the G, C, and D7. 1, 2, 3, 4. C, D7, G. Here it is on the E minor, A minor, B7. 1, 2, 3, 4. today we've learnt the key of D, the three principal chords, D, G, A7. And we also learnt the A major chord, which we played as D, A, and G. And now we can mix those chords with the chords we've learned in prior tapes. For instance, the D7, which we learnt as part of being the G, C, and D7, the D major fits very nicely in the key of G. Here is a progression that goes from G to D major to E minor to C. It sounds like this: 3, 4. Don't worry too much about the right hand yet. We have 2 more tapes that we're going to learn just principal chords, and then we're going to start with some basic changes and a little bit of rhythm and some different finger picking. So for this week, for this lesson, good picking, lots of practice, and it's getting more difficult, but you're sounding an awful lot better. So thank you very much, and we'll catch you next time.